Welcome back to Creative Insights. So today I have an amazing guest, and guys, after he traveled to over 120 countries, thousands of cities, I have managed to get the time to have a sit down with him today. We'll be speaking with Steve Urchin Wilson, and we'll be discussing his book, Lookdown.
Lookdown, Shit You May Have Missed. Now available on Amazon. Published by Quote Studios.
Sexy gal full of curves. Hand up your body in a girl.
Only for hot gal in the place. Them want to wind them ways.
Steve, what inspired you to write Lookdown?
Well, Lookdown was kind of a COVID project where I think a lot of people were going through and clearing their phones, and I was doing that, and then I started to realize I had a lot of pictures that I'd taken, from that angle. Just because when I travel, I always try to look for a different perspective of seeing things and not just go, oh, the Eiffel Tower, And then as I looked through the pictures, I realized, okay, this is cool. I should do some kind of project with it. And then I said, well, why not a book? And then I started thinking about it and saying, just a book of pictures of looking down, and I started to try and sort of figure out and contextualize how would that make a story and how would that make a book, or is it just a book of pictures?
So the book features a few interesting quotes. Tell us more about that.
So the quotes kind of came along where I said, I have these pictures, but I need something to sort of narrate them or something to put them together instead of just throwing them in a book, And so I said, let me start thinking of quotes that I could put, At first it was just maybe comments about the pictures, and then I said, that's kind of boring. So I said, no, let me try and come up with, quotes. And then I started thinking about the name Lookdown and tying that name into some kind of a theme as to what the quotes would be then talking about. And then I have all these quotes that ring around in my head, which I think most people do, of like quotes from my father and my grandfathers, and the distillation of those quotes into my version of saying them or thinking them, in my mind. So that's where most of the quotes in the book came from.
Okay, so obviously the quotes are from what your grandfather and father said to you. So they play a big part in your life. How did that influence where you are now?
Interestingly, I think that my mother's father was a more sort of freestyle and creative kind of grandfather. He was a carpenter, and he was an accountant, and he was a bunch of different things. And then my father's father was much more sort of the traditional grandfather, very straight-laced, and he wearing things like this, and he'd say, why are you wearing these things? What are you trying to say about yourself? And he always, sort of made me question. I don't think he intended it to turn out this way, but he made me question why I did the flair things or wore the flair pieces, or wanted to be different. What was my reason for wanting to be different? And at first, he was trying to, I think, maybe suppress that and try to get me back into straight and narrow, because that's how he thought that was the best way for me to go. And then my father was not like his father, much more, he's an educator, and he sort of said, find your thing, find whatever your thing is and ride that rail, So I think that the combination of the three kind of led me to feel like, yes, I need an education, but it's also okay for me to color outside the lines.
Okay. I like that. Because I feel like parents don't necessarily always guide you to do what you feel like doing.
Yeah.
They kind of be like, okay, no, you can't always do that on the side. You can do that for fun, but not live your life that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that what happens is with parenting is a lot of the time, the intention of what you say to your child is then read and interpreted by them, right? Sure. So just like us, right? Things that our parents said to us when we were growing up, maybe we didn't take them the way that our parents wanted us to take them. We interpreted them for ourselves, and then we live our life the way we want to. So parenting is a bit of a crapshoot.
So why did you choose the style of a coffee table book?
To me, because I travel so much, and when I travel, I don't have time to really stop and smell the roses. So a lot of time to me, when I land in a city, I might gravitate to a book that's in a hotel room or in a hotel lobby, or even in a bookstore. I don't want a book that's heavy tome, that has all this text that I now need to sit on and let me try and drink through all of this to figure out what it is about this country that I'm going to like or connect with. I always thought it was great to be able to have a book that had a lot of pictures, because as I say, a picture says 1,000 words, right? So if I have 100 pictures in my book, then that's 100,000 words. So it was always easier to say, okay, let me look through these pictures, and I feel like people connect very quickly with visuals, and then I added the quotes so that it didn't just seem like, well, there's a vapid collection of a bunch of pictures, to sort of give some context to those.
So as a new author, is it hard to juggle everything, being an artist manager, a dad, all of those things?
Absolutely, I would say it's impossible. My lovely publisher is always on my case, on my timelines, and I'm always behind. And then what I find is I get like a bubble of time, and I just focus, and I tend to create in spurts. Whereas the dream is, okay, every day I'm going to get up and I'll spend 2 hours writing. It's impossible. It's so many things coming at me. A lot of being an artist manager is reactive, and a lot of being a parent is reactive.
Sure.
So sometimes I'm sitting down trying to write something, and I hear a fight starting in the other room, or I hear the teacher saying something online to my son who's not paying attention in homeschool, and I have to abruptly get up and move, and that just totally messes up the whole creative flow. So it's definitely been difficult, and then of course during COVID, everybody's home. So there isn't any of that, okay, everybody's going to school now. I know that between these times I can focus on work or focus on writing. So it's been very difficult. It's a challenge. But I guess that's part of the whole deal, which I'm now learning.
Okay, so you don't, well, who has a man cave? But I was just thinking, like, would it be just be like, okay, like, just give me 30 minutes. You tell the children, the wife, like,
you don't have children, eh? Yeah. The first thing that happens when you say to the children, give me 30 minutes, is they go, why? What are you doing? This sounds interesting. Let me give you 5 minutes, and then I'll come in there and find out what it is you're doing that you don't want me to be a part of. So, I mean, I'm on Zoom calls sometimes, and my kids just walking through, who are you talking to? Can I say hi? My daughter is 4 and my son is 7, so they don't really appreciate the gravity of, no, this is an important work thing, and you're not involved with this right now. They're like, what do you mean? This is my house, just like yours. So they don't really work well with boundaries.
Okay, I understand that.
And a man cave is a dream, definitely. A man cave is something that every man wants, but few men can get until kids are out of the house.
True.
My man cave is currently the playroom.
So what's the reception like? Are persons overseas and locally actually purchasing it, etc.?
Yeah, the reactions have been really good. I've been lucky that as I've traveled the world, I've been able to make connections in different cities, and so a lot of my friends have been very supportive and been even getting the book and posting it online, and the reviews have been great on Amazon, and it's been pretty fantastic. And then locally, I'm getting a lot of flack for not having printed copies available here or in bookstores and stuff like that. But in COVID, of course, it's been difficult because even I have friends who own and manage hotels, and I've said, hey, can I get books and put them in your lobbies? And they're like, well, actually, we've removed all of our books from our lobbies because we don't want people touching the book, and then someone else comes and touches the book, and then it would be like, we have to wipe the book down every 30 minutes. So it's definitely been challenging getting the book here, but the demand is here, so we're just now working on the supply.
Okay. Well, you can work on that for the future because we can plan with them.
Absolutely, it's happening.
So what do you love most about Jamaica when you're home from touring?
The thing I love the most about touring is coming home, right? So it's always the great thing about collecting stories and collecting, trinkets or collecting anything, art, whatever, is that you get to bring it home, and then you get to show your friends, your family, and tell them about it. So coming home is my favorite part about Jamaica. No matter where in the world I go, and the more exciting it is, and the bigger it is, and the bigger the experience is, the more excited I am to go home. And then there's just a feeling of home that just can't be replicated anywhere else. I mean, no matter where you are in the world, you might feel at home for, or more at home, but you don't feel as at home as when you're home. Being home and Jamaica is a special place that our energy here is unique. I mean, you land at the airport and you come out and you breathe the air, and the first man that calls you, you're like, yeah, I know where I am. In the new version of the book, a new edition of the book, all the chapters actually end with me coming home to Jamaica. So the photos will be international, and then the end of the chapter is always a Jamaican photo, in the same context, because to show sort of that story of as you travel, and everything happens, everything closes and culminates with you coming home.
Nice.
And of course, we have the best of everything. So
I agree. Okay, so what key lessons should readers take away?
I think the key lesson I want people to take away is, or two key lessons I guess is, one is, don't forget to look at different perspectives. When you travel, don't just look up and look at the thing in front of you that's always there. Look down, look for the details, look for different perspectives. And in life, do the same thing. Don't always just accept whatever perspective is thrown at you. Look around and say, well, okay, I see that, but I also see that, and I also see that. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is which is the part of Lookdown, which is the sort of more philosophical part of it, is looking down at what's growing below you and helping it grow. Whether that means mentoring people below you, whether that means parenting your kids, whether that means people who you manage, people that you work with, whatever it is, helping them grow underneath you, just like those above you helps you grow up to where you are. Another part of looking down also, of course, is in my book I do feature a lot of animals, and I find that whenever I travel everywhere in the world, I think that was something that was surprising to me. Is not just Jamaica have a street dog or street cat or street whatever, right? Everywhere you go, there are these animals. And what's also really interesting to me to see is how well some of these animals are treated in certain countries around the world. In Turkey, for example, the cats are stray, but everybody feeds them. And everybody treats them well. And if there's a cat that looks diseased, somebody will just pick it up and take it to a vet, even though they don't own it. So I think that there's a lot of also looking on and taking care of the animals.
So you're an animal lover?
Yeah, I'm definitely an animal lover. I grew up with dogs my whole life. And then when I was 16, a girlfriend of mine gave me a cat, which my father aptly named Dog Food, because he thought that the cat would be dead within a week or so. That cat lived to be, I think, 30 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your shoes are a dominant motif in the book. Are you a sneakerhead or a Clarksonite?
I've always liked Clarks. I always liked how Clarks looked. When I was young, when I was growing up, I could never afford Clarks. And then when I started traveling and doing well in music, I always found that sneakers were easier to travel in. So my thing was I always looked for the most comfortable shoes, slip-ons. I want shoes that when I'm at the airport, I can set them off, I can put them on quickly. If I have to run out of the room, I can put them on quickly. But I always want something that has a little bit of style to it. So I'm not really a sneaker pimp. I have friends who are sneaker pimps who have like the full collections. There was a time when I got really into sneakers, and then I started to realize that I just don't have the space for them. And sneakers take up a lot of space in your bag. So when you're traveling, you're trying to travel light, especially going to a lot of cities on one run. You definitely don't want to have more than 2 pairs of shoes in your bag. My general rule of thumb is wear one, carry one. So when that happened, I started to whittle down on my collection and also the kind of shoes that I bought. So I'm an Adidas freak, honestly, but I've always wanted a pair of Clarks. So we were in London on one trip and I had a little bit of time. I said, let me go check out the Clark store. And I went and actually have 2 Clark stores in London right here with the hotel where I'm at. One which is a more traditional Clark store, and then one which was like this kind of new idea, new take on Clarks. And that's actually where I got the Clarks that are on the cover of the book. And I was just like so struck by how different they were. And I was like, wow, I'm gonna get a pair of Clarks that nobody in Jamaica has ever seen. And I'll be able to go home and boast from people. So that was really how I got my Clarks fascination started.
Okay. So how do you you say you have 2 pairs, but how do you then choose the color that you carry with you? You just stick to black or gray?
I stick to black and grays mostly. I find that if you carry a pair of blue shoes, that's gonna go with one outfit. You carry a pair of red shoes, that's gonna go with one outfit. So unless you literally plan your whole wardrobe ahead of time and say, all right, I have 6 things in here that can go with red shoes, then it just makes more sense to wear black and gray.
Okay.
Or white.
But you mentioned earlier that there's another book coming out. So what can we look for in the new edition? And are we gonna have a hardcover this time?
Yeah. So I always wanted Lookdown to be a hardcover book, but I just didn't have enough pages actually. So now what's happened is I've actually written intros to each chapter, and I've added about 30 pages to the book. A lot more photos of Jamaica, because I realized that I have so many pictures of all these places around the world, and I didn't have any pictures of home. And like I said, it's traveling is all about coming home to me. So I wanted to really add a lot more of Jamaica in there and show, my love of Jamaica, and show that whatever around the world there is an equivalent or better here.
Okay. So you've added published author to your successes. I've heard you say that you have a second book in the making. Can you give us a little tad bit of what's to come?
I hope a second and a third and a fourth book. So I'm actually working on 2 projects right now. One is a children's story, which was actually inspired by my daughter. Some story that me and her actually kind of wrote together, which is pretty cool. And then also a story more on my entertainment side and some of the stories of my entertainment life.
So it's a little bit of a memoir, you'd say?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a memoir and a little bit of I guess like a how-to. I'm always like very sort of leery of these books that say, hey, I'm an entertainment guru and here's how to do it. You know, I'm very leery of that kind of thing. So I'm kind of trying to do a combination of, well, here are some of my stories and here are some of my experiences. Learn from them what you can and take from it what you will. And I'm trying to get that book out before the end of this year.
Nice. Okay, and you mentioned the third and fourth. Have an idea of what those might be?
More children's books, and then actually, hopefully, a book of poetry. So, because I've always kind of been, you know, dabbling in that.
I like that. That's nice. Okay.
But I think a book of poetry needs to come when I'm kind of more established and people care about what I have to say. I think a book of poetry to be ready with people be like, wait, please send my poet.
Studio. What was your experience working like?
Well, it's interesting because as an artist manager, I'm used to the person managing the talent. I'm not used to being managed as talent. So it's a very new experience for me. I never really had, you know, a person who would keep me on schedule before. I never had a person who would make demands of me before. And it gave me a really cool perspective of what it feels like as the artist when I'm constantly harassing them and saying, hey, remember you have to be this place on time and I need this thing from you and I need this drop from you and you have an interview at this time. And you know, it was connective in that way, but it was also very refreshing to have somebody helping keep me on task, you know, about something for me, because I've never published anything before. So Quote has been absolutely fantastic and continue to be, and help me with marketing and help me with theory and help me with layout and help me with design and help me with narrative, you know, and helping me flesh out, co-creating with me to help me bring the vision of the book to life, you know, and keeping me on deadlines.
Important life lessons you can give to your kids?
I think for me the most important life lesson, which is in the book as well, is a quote that my father said to me, was that, you know, he told me, he's like, you know, he said, I don't have a business to give you, I don't have, you know, millions of dollars, I don't have a mansion to give you. He says, all I have is my name, you know, and what I've done in my walk throughout the world is try to leave my name everywhere so that when my children come after me, if they say, well, I am so-and-so's child, that there will be an immediate assumption of a certain level of decency and a certain level of, you know, just, you know, a certain respect that comes with your name, but at the same time, not putting so much weight on the name that it's a difficult thing to carry. I have friends who tell me, oh, my father is this big, hugely successful businessman, and everywhere I go, you know, I feel like there's a weight on me because I haven't lived up to, and never feel like no matter what I do, I'll ever be good enough or big enough to be as big as my father. And I think that's unfortunate, you know, and I think that it doesn't mean that if my child does something different than what I have done or takes a whole different tack in life, I still want them to feel like everything that they do is, you know, it's their name. So I've given you enough weight to open doors, but not so much weight that it crushes you.
The urchin in your name, where's that from?
So my first business that I ever started was Mystic Urchin Music, which is this logo that I actually designed, and it was me and Farnizzi. We started a company. We used to do a lot of live music events, and then we started getting into managing artists and recording music, and it's the first tattoo I ever got.
Wow.
So, Mystic Urchin. And people so it was too long, so people would say, hey, Mystic Steve, or Urchin Steve, or Steve Urchin. And it just became a thing where it stuck. And it's funny because I'll be reading, you know, those questionnaires where it says, do you have an alias, or I'm applying for a visa, and it says, you know, other aliases that you might have. And I never put it, because I just think that an alias sounds like something a criminal would have, you know, and I never thought, I always wondered, how does somebody get an alias? You know, and it's that, it literally got stuck. And what I like, the reason behind the name Mystic Urchin was that I always felt like, you know, when them say street urchins, you know, somebody that always on the road, you know, back in my 20s and 30s and even my 40s, I was always on the road. So like, you know, every pin drop, I'm there, you know, so I felt ever present. But at the same time, I felt like I was on And I'm not trying to say that I'm above anybody, but I felt like I was on a different level. I always looked at things in different ways and tried to always bring my different perspective. So it was like a mystic urchin. So it wasn't just like a street urchin, it was a mystic urchin. You know, so that was kind of the concept behind it. And so that always just stuck with me. And it's funny because even sometimes my bank would email me and say, Mr. Urchin, and I'm like, you guys have my ID on file, what are you? You know, but it just stuck. And I feel that I own it. And then what happened is, when I was working on this book, and when I don't know if everybody has this experience, but for me, I didn't really get to know my father, my parents as people. I knew them as my parents, but I never knew them as people. I didn't know what is it they like, what is their struggle, what was their life like, what was it like when I was young for them. And it's not something I ever thought about, and I think a lot of us don't think about it until late in life. And when I sort of started to think about that, I said, I want to get to know my parents as people before, God forbid, they're not here. You know, and so I started scheduling lunches and dinners and just hangout times, you know, with them. And so I'd go and I'd sit and just say, you know, what was Jamaica like before independence? You know, what was downtown like? You know, they're telling me, oh, we saw downtown was a thing. And we'd walk around downtown, and then we'd walk home from downtown to Vineyard Town. And I'd be like, what? You can't. But it's not only a long walk in Jamaica. I know you try to do that walk, somebody must rob you pretty there. I mean, hopefully not. But you know, and so what happened is as I was doing the book, and I started to think about my name, and I said, wow, I don't know how my dad feels about me not really championing my last name, you know, and using this business last name. And so I started injecting my last name more into things, you know, my real last name into things. And so when I did the book, there was a consideration. Do I just do it as Steve Urchin, because that's everybody knows me? Or do I do Steve Urchin Wilson? And I said I really wanted to include Wilson because I wanted to give that nod to my dad and say, oh, yeah, I know that a lot of what I am comes from you. Which is also something that I learned by sitting down and spending time with him. So that is also something that I would like to impart to people, is take that time and get to know your parents. And especially the more you have them up, is the more I think it's important for you to ask them, what was the story? Why was it that when I was growing up, you weren't able to give me that time, or you weren't able to give me this thing, or you were so hard on me, or you weren't, or whatever your questions are. Ask them, because they're humans, right? And we are so busy making excuses for our own selves and our own lives and why we don't do something or why we did something that we're not, and we don't take that time to say, well, hold on, why were they the way they were? Or why are they the way they are? And even looking at their relationships with their parents, because these things are things that are going to take us down, you know?
I like that perspective. I would look into that. That's true.
I love that. So a bonus question, Steve. Based on these tattoos, have any of them come from your travels around the world?
Yeah. So pretty much all my tattoos are from when I was traveling, except for the very first logo of the Mystic Urchin was done here in Jamaica, and it was fun because I always wanted tattoos and earrings and stuff like that when I was growing up. But my parents were, you know, pretty serious church people and educators, and they were like, well, when you move out, you can do anything you want to do. But until you move out, you're going to look and remain, you know, the way that we approve of. So I remember, I think I was about 25 when I got my first tattoo. And it was same thing, Fahrenheit at the time, Fahrenheit, you know, was like, yo, we did this company, we did this logo, let's go get this tattoo, you know. And I was like nervous but excited, and went and I did it and I caught the bug. And after that we started traveling a lot, and so every time I traveled somewhere, especially back in the day, there wasn't great tattoo artists in Jamaica. You do now have good tattoo artists here, you know, shout out to them. Britt especially, and Philip R2, that's someone I shout out. And I haven't done more work here, and I actually want to. And it's addictive, you know, once you start doing this, it sort of becomes, and I feel like it's like you're telling your own story on your own skin, you know, and nobody can tell that from you. And it's art. I mean, you invest in art, why not invest in it and carry it over you? So, but, yeah.
I really like that one.
Yeah, this is my favorite. This is actually done in Miami by the guy who did Rick Ross's back.
Ah.
His name is Alex, whose number I can't find anymore, and I'd love to find him back. So, Alex, if you watch it, show me. But I did this in the studio while Shampa was recording songs in Miami. And everybody always asks me, yo, who did that? And they want me to say it's somebody in Jamaica. And I want to be able to say it's somebody in Jamaica, but it wasn't.
Yeah. You just need to figure out your new piece and get one.
No, I already have about 5. And I want to find a person to do them, that's what I need to do. My favorite part about being a dad has to be that you hear, oh, you know, you never really love until you have children, and it's incredible. It's so true that the love that you now feel for these beings is on a different level. Like, I mean, and you cannot explain that to somebody who doesn't have children. It's people tell me, oh, but I love my dog like that. And I'm like, no, you don't. You think you do, but you don't. And then how much children teach you is always just something that constantly amazes me. Every single day, you know, you are there trying to impart knowledge and trying to teach them and trying to show them the way. And sometimes they'll tell you, you know, and they say things to you, and you're just like, wow, how do you know that? And it's not something that you've taught them. It's something that they're seeing from their perspective. And I think, you know, the old school thing of children are to be seen and not heard, you know, I think that's totally wrong. And I like to really discuss things with my kids, you know, so when they have a freak out moment or whatever, I, you know, calm them down and I say, okay, tell me what's going on with you, you know, explain to me what's happening. You know, this method of punishment and extreme punishment that we grew up with in Jamaica. I don't think it certainly doesn't do anything to open up communication, and it doesn't do anything to solve what it is that's causing the child to behave that way. So to me, it's been amazing just learning those lessons of interactivity and being able to hear what's going on in the head of this thing that you think is a child that can't think properly yet and whatever. But my 4-year-old says things to me sometimes, and I'm just like, wow, like you're absolutely on point. You know, so that's the most incredible thing to me about being a parent is, one, is feeding that love, and two, is getting that knowledge from them that you are so constantly surprised by.
But they have a different perspective that you, with everything, like you're not looking at how simple it is, but they just say that, and that's it.
Hey, my daughter said to me, I said something about God or creating or something like that, and she said, no, that's not how it is, it's like this. And I said, well, how will you know that? And she said, well, I was with God more recently than you.
I like her.
And what can you say to that? I was like, well, okay, you got me, you know.
Very true.
I said, who told you that? God. I said, okay. And I think that there's that voice in us when we're young that we're told to start listening to as we get older, and then when you're older, you're told, go make a relationship with God now. And you're like, but I want. And you made me start listening and know what's going to find it. But
Have you ever said that on any other interview?
No.
That was awesome. That was really, really awesome.
Well, it's funny, you know, because it's that Kendra says to me, she sent me the questions beforehand and, you know, think about them and stuff, and I'm like, I don't actually like to do that. I find that I create, like, just like that's, and it happens to me, it's actually something that's a problem for me in corporate world, where they'll say, okay, you know, write and I'm like, I can't really do that. But if you ask me, I'll tell you, and it's going to be 20 times better than anything I could have written.
Sure.
And then if you ask me to write it after I've said it, I can't do that. Because it was that moment of inspiration where you said that thing. You know, and it's funny because it made me understand like freestyle rappers. You know, where you watch rap battles and you see guys destroying somebody. And then you're like, okay, go make a record. And they're like, okay, to make a record, the record's terrible. You're like, why? How can you do that when you can't do this? You know, but at the same time,
it's the passion.
It's that being in the moment. It's full of consciousness. You know, and I think that's such a powerful place to be. If you can sit in full of consciousness and create there, incredible. No, I did a same thing. COVID again. COVID has been actually incredible for me in a lot of ways because I've done things I've never done before. You know, and things I wanted to do, and sometimes afraid to do. I've always wanted to be a creative. That's the reason I manage, is because I couldn't sing and I couldn't play any instruments, and I was like, well, I have to be around music, I have to be around entertainment, I have to figure this out, you know. And so I ended up being in management because I was like, I want to be on the stage, even if it's when he's running off the stage, give me a high five, and people go, who's that guy who's high five to? You get like a 1 point, you know, percentage of that energy. And I did a friend of mine who runs an advertising agency called me and said, yo, I need a voiceover for like right now. And I'm like, all right, who do you want? And he's like, you. And I'm like, what do you mean me? Like, I can get you Wayne Marshall, or I can call people and say, no, I want your voice. And I was like, all right. So I did the voice, and when I heard it back, I was like, hey, that don't sound bad. But it's just not something that you, especially also how you sound in your head. It's different than how you sound on tape, but you of course must know that. So, and for me, it's like I love how I sound in my head. And when I hear myself on tape, I'm like, I don't know who the hell that is. And then I've gotten used to now, because of the book and because of the voiceovers, hearing my voice outside and recognizing it, which never happened to me before. Like I hear my voice sometimes, I'm like, who is that talking? And now I recognize my voice, which is pretty interesting.
You don't just have a voice, the way you use it, because you go up and down and you talk like an American. Alright, so Jamaicans don't understand what it comes when you talk, they have a flat tone.
That's true.
To them that sounds nice and jiggy and blah blah blah. But if you listen to an American and how they talk, they go up and down, even if they're sad.
You know where I think that comes from with me is both my parents are university lecturers. So the way that they speak is like that, very intonated, right? And so so they're able to put gravity on certain words when they speak. And when you do that, I think that you are so much better understood, especially if you're speaking to somebody in a different language, you know. That's something that I've noticed as I travel, that when you're speaking to somebody who doesn't speak a lot of English, it's very important to do that, to say, this is very important. They're like, okay, I heard that he said something there that seemed to be different than what he said before. So I need to understand that what he's saying is, you know, there's weight to that part. And I think also that happens is I think I have an international accent because with a Jamaican tone to it, because as I've traveled, I'm the person who has to be understood, right? The artist does not have to be understood, to be honest. The artist is to be the artist. So when he's in an interview, he can say whatever he wants to say, and people are going to either understand or not, or put on subtitles under what he's saying. But when I am explaining something, I must be understood, and I must be understood the first time. Because oftentimes it's not a second time for me to explain what I've just told you. So I've been able to have had to crush in and at the same time take enough international flavors. Sometimes I'm saying something and I realize I said that with a French intonation, and I'm like, why did I do that? Because I've learned to, when I'm in France, that's a word that French people will not understand in English unless you pronounce it like that. Because they just have that, you know, and Spanish people too. There are certain things that you have to, I don't know if you ever say like on Instagram where you say like Spanish people laughing and it's J-A-J-A-J-A-J-A. Yeah, and everybody says ja 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 ja. It's not ja 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 ja. It's that J is H for them, so it's ah ah ah. Just like, and when they see us right ah ah, they're like, what is that? So even stuff like that is important too, and I've internalized a lot of that. So because of that, when I speak, I intone like that differently.
Yeah, you code switch.
Yeah, code switch, exactly.
So you speak Spanish and French?
Un poquito.
Un poquito?
Un petit. Yes, a little bit of both.